By the time I turned 25, I felt like I was crashing, and very quickly. Hey fam, welcome to episode 3 of Dear Diary, where you all get to travel with me on my journey in therapy. If you're new here, thank you so much for stopping by my channel. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, the like button, turn on your notification bell, and check out a few of my other videos. And for you guys that have been rocking with me, welcome back. Thanks for joining me. Let's get started. But first, I'm gonna have a sip of this tea. So today we discussed discovering who I am as a person. In my last video, I mentioned that one of the reasons I began this journey is because I realized I had no clue who I was apart from the praise and approval of others. So let's unpack this. My childhood was unrivaled. I can say that with confidence. I am so thankful for my grandparents and for the life that they afforded me. We had an amazing home. When I think of my childhood, some of the words that come to mind are warmth, laughter, smiles, happiness, music, singing, God, love for God and love for other people, friends. I just had an incredible childhood. My grandparents loved each other. They loved me. And this love wasn't some like obscure idea. It was so palatable. It was amazing. I was just so full of warmth and love as a child. My grandparents invested so much in me. They put me in the best private schools. I was involved in a lot of extracurricular activities. I was just really blessed. So incredibly blessed. Around the age of 11 or 12, all of that changed. My household underwent a complete transformation in every detail that you can imagine. Our diet changed, our dress changed, our forms of recreation changed, the church we attended changed. In fact, we moved to a completely different state. The friends that we had, those changed. Our very conservative Christian views became even more conservative and, dare I say, extreme. And I never questioned any of it because it was all tied to these particular religious ideas that we held very near and dear. And also my grandmother was extremely educated and she had so much, like, a wealth of experience under her belt. I never really questioned anything until the day my grandmother came to my closet. She had a trash bag in hand and she threw out the majority of my clothing. Her rationale was the clothing was not made from pure fibers. It wasn't 100% cotton, 100% linen, 100% wool. And I remember thinking, this is a little extreme. That just a tad, just a little bit. This is a little bit extreme, but like, whatever, she has her reasoning and it seemed to make sense at the time. I never questioned it. I just went along with it. As time went on, my grandmother grew even more extreme and eventually my grandparents separated. I think I was 13 at the time. And that left me really sad because I was a grandpa's girl. My grandpa and I were extremely close. We were pretty much joined at the hip. We did everything together and he just provided so much extra warmth and balance in our household. So that split really affected me, but life went on and we would call each other all the time and I visit him each time I went to Alabama to visit my mom and my siblings. Let me just pause and say, I believe with all my heart that my grandparents, specifically my grandmother, had very pure intentions in everything that she was doing. And I know it came from a heart of just wanting us as a family to be closer together, closer to God. I believe she had pure intentions, but her methods were very much detrimental. Then I became a teenager. But listen. I was very much a rule follower, kind of laid back personality, wanted so sincerely and earnestly to be a good Christian girl. I was very obedient, very compliant. So my grandmother never expressed any issues that she had with me rebelling, going through that teenage rebellion stage. However, that gradual increase in autonomy that is needed in a child's life, especially a teenager's life, was not granted to me. Cultivating decision-making skills is crucial in a teenager's life, really crucial in a child's life from early on, but especially as a teenager, because that teenager needs to know and needs to understand, that child needs to know and understand that life is full of choices. Through proper guidance, hopefully you will make the right decision, but sometimes you'll make a bad decision and you might have to suffer the natural consequences of that poor decision. Nonetheless, decisions must be made, and a child, a teenager, they need that gradual increase of autonomy. They need to be taught decision-making skills early on. That was not granted to me. I was not allowed to make my own decisions. I mean, even in the smallest of matters. Every single decision was made for me. I'm so serious, even from which instruments I wanted to play. I remember my grandmother coming to me, I think I was 15 at the time, and she thought that I should learn how to play the organ. And I told her, okay, add another instrument, but that's not really my passion. It's not really my burden. I don't feel impressed or led or guided to play the organ. But she went out and she bought an organ, and she signed me up for organ lessons, and I wasn't in it at all. So what instruments I should learn to play, the extracurricular activities in which I was involved, the friends and the associates that I kept, where I sat in church. Guys, my grandmother would even decide for me which outfit I would wear for the day. I mean, I was like 16, 17 years old. She was picking out my clothes. She was picking out my outfits, how I organized my closet, how certain things in my room should be organized. I even remember, oh my gosh, do you guys know what bird baths are? Or like little wash ups? So, you've taken your shower for the day, and maybe it's the end of the day and you want to clean the essential areas on your body. So, you get your washcloth, go to the sink or the tub or whatever, and you clean those important areas. My grandmother would come into the bathroom with me, and she'd sit there and she'd watch me. She'd say, first, start with your ears. And then, here's how you wash out your cloth. I was 16, you guys. Now you do this area, and then that area, and the next area. Every single decision was made for me. Eventually, this control bled over into my personal Christian walk. I could not pick up the Bible and say, you know what, I kind of feel led to read this particular chapter in the book of John. No, my grandma would come to me and say, no, you're not going to read from the book of John. I want you to read from this book, this chapter. And when you finish, I want you to write out 2 paragraphs detailing what you've learned. I will grade it. And then I want you to memorize those paragraphs so that you can share them with other people. My grandmother would awaken me at 4 o'clock in the morning to pray. And it wasn't as simple as, hey, Shaquala, get up. It's 4 o'clock. You need to pray. It was, hey, Shaquala, it's 4 o'clock. Get up, kneel beside me in our prayer area, and I want you to repeat after me. And so this would happen. It'd be dark outside. We had this little area where we prayed. I knelt beside her, and she'd say, Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for waking us up this morning, and pause and wait for me to repeat after her. And she would pray for hours. I remember sometimes kind of dozing off and falling asleep in the midst of her prayers. And then we'd have to begin again. I remember being told that I could not trust myself. I could not trust my feelings, that my feelings were against me. Let me pause and say this. Feelings are important. They matter. They make up our uniqueness. They give life to the emotional side of us. If we push away our feelings, we lose a very special part of ourselves and of our lives. And this is what happened to me. Eventually, my grandmother told me that any negative feeling that I had, be it sadness, disappointment, frustration, she told me that those feelings were from the devil because God wanted me to be happy. He wanted me to be cheerful. In fact, there was this song in an old hymn book that we had, and it was called Always Cheerful. And anytime that I was sad, which is a feeling that I had a right to feel, anytime that I was sad or upset or frustrated, she would literally come and stand in front of me and tell me to smile and remind me to be always cheerful. And then she would sing this song, Always Cheerful. And she'd just stand there and sing it until a smile came to my face. I ate it all up. Because in my heart of hearts, I wanted to be a good Christian girl. And so I became this people-pleasing, role-following, good Christian girl whose happiness was derived from helping other people, or it was derived from knowing or hoping that I had had a successful day as a Christian. It didn't help that the particular church we attended, that entire environment seemed to praise people that were performers, that were good performers. You know, they looked the part, they walked the part, and so they were placed on this pedestal. And soon I found myself placed on this pedestal. So my home environment and church environment were the perfect ingredients to creating this emotionally codependent individual who had no idea who I was. Throughout my preteen, teenage, and even very young adult years, every single decision was made for me. The simplest of decisions were made for me. My emotions were ignored and deemed from the devil if they were not emotions of happiness. And even that was judged. You know, it had to be radiated on my face, reflected in my voice. And even then, my happiness was quantified. After high school, I attended this small school that was a missionary training school because that's what I wanted to become, a missionary. And so I was very much involved at this school. I was playing for a lot of people, studying, helping others, teaching others, just very much involved. And so one day a guest speaker came, this missionary that I looked up to almost my entire life. And so after the meetings for that day, I went up to talk to him and to his wife. And in the midst of our conversation, the founder of this school came up and she interrupted us and said, "You know what? Shaquala has all the skills to make a really good missionary, but she's just lacking the Holy Spirit. If she had the Holy Spirit, she'd be well on her way to being a good missionary." And I thought, why am I doing all of this? You know, and who is she to tell me what I have and what I don't have? And so that was my life from the age of 11 all the way up to 2021. By the time I turned 25, I felt like I was crashing, and very quickly. I couldn't understand why I felt very unhappy, alone, hollow, unfulfilled, and devoid of value unless I was helping or rescuing another person. I couldn't understand it. I just felt very confused, and I realize now a little bit depressed as well. I just felt like I had no energy to really live life, and I couldn't understand why. Well, I recently just finished reading this book right here, entitled Codependent No More by Melody Beattie. Oh my goodness, you guys. Fam, this book has changed my life. I highly recommend it to everyone. I'll leave a link down in the description box so you guys can check it out. But this book answered so many questions that I had, so many questions that I didn't even realize that I had, and it gave me so much clarity as to why I felt the way that I was feeling. And I just want to read a little excerpt from this book. It reads, "Even families that have no history of alcoholism reject feelings. Quote, don't feel that way. That feeling is inappropriate. In fact, don't feel, end quote, may be the message we hear. We quickly learn the lie that our feelings don't count, that our feelings are somehow wrong." Does that sound familiar or what? Our feelings are not listened to, so we quit listening to them too. You guys, let me keep on reading. Whew. Codependents are oppressed, depressed, and repressed. Many of us can quickly tell what someone else is feeling, why that person is feeling that way, how long they've felt that way, and what that person is probably going to do because of that feeling. Many of us spend our lives fussing about other people's feelings. We try to fix people's feelings. We try to control other people's feelings. We don't want to hurt people. We don't want to upset them. And we don't want to offend them. We feel so responsible for other people's feelings, yet we don't know what we are feeling. If we do, we don't know what to do to fix ourselves. Many of us have abandoned or never taken responsibility for our emotional selves. This was me. I'm telling you guys, this entire book was me because I'm working on changing. So the question is, who am I? And how do I discover me? I believe the answer to be vulnerability. So I was listening to a podcast the other day. Does that make you feel like such an official adult? I was listening to a podcast. But I was listening to a podcast. It was Oprah's Super Soul Conversations, and she was interviewing Dr. Brene Brown. If you don't know who she is, you need to know who she is. Dr. Brene Brown. Look her up. Look up her TED Talk. I will link it down below so you guys can listen. As I listened to this conversation, a lot of things really hit home for me. But one thing that really stood out to me was the importance of vulnerability with oneself. Many times we think of vulnerability and we think of it in the capacity of a relationship with another person. And while that is important in a relationship to have a healthy, flourishing relationship, I feel that many times we forget about fostering a healthy, loving relationship with ourselves. So the relationship that you have with yourself is one of the most important relationships that you can nourish. Oprah mentioned that vulnerability is the cornerstone that gives us the courage to be ourselves. This journey of being vulnerable with myself is terrifying. It is absolutely terrifying, you guys, but also it's liberating. It is liberating when I reserve space for myself, when I reserve space to be authentic, when I reserve space for feeling. One thing that I like to say is that feelings come and feelings go, but what's most important is that I reserve a space for them, a non-judgmental space for them, where I allow them to come, I allow myself to feel them, and then I allow those feelings to flow. One thing that Dr. Brene Brown says about authenticity is this: authenticity is a practice that you choose, sometimes every moment of the day. Choose to show up. Who am I and how do I discover who I am? How do you discover who you are? By being vulnerable, by having the courage to be your authentic self, by having the courage and reserving the space for feelings to come and for feelings to flow. I love you guys so much for watching this episode of Dear Diary. If you guys would like to see more, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and turn on your notification bell so you can be alerted each and every time I drop a new video. Love you guys so much. Don't forget, you are the best. Peace. You know you might surprise yourself.